We've all seen it happen. 1 minute, a team's riding high, basking in the glory of top-flight football. The next, they're packing their bags for the championship. Shocking, right? Well, buckle up, because we're about to take a roller coaster ride through some of the most jaw-dropping relegations in Premier League history. Picture this. You're Aston Villa, a club with a European Cup gathering dust in your trophy cabinet. You've got a squad that wouldn't look out of place in a who's who of football talent. But somehow you find yourself tumbling out of the Premier League faster than a clumsy waiter dropping a tray of champagne flutes. The 2015-16 season was like a bad dream for Villa fans. It was as if the football gods had decided to play a cruel joke on them. Hey, remember when you were good? Well, forget about that. The team that once conquered Europe was now struggling to conquer their own pitch. But what went wrong? Well, for starters, Villa went through managers like a kid goes through candy on Halloween. 4 managers in 1 season? That's not stability, that's a revolving door. Add in some questionable transfer decisions and you've got a recipe for a disaster. The saddest part, they had some real talent in that squad. Idrissa Gana Gueye, who later became a midfield maestro for Everton and PSG, was there. So was a young Jack Grealish, who'd go on to become England's most expensive player. Talk about wasted potential. Now let's hop in our time machine and zip back to 2003. West Ham United had a team that read like a future England stars catalogue. Jermaine Defoe, Michael Carrick, Joe Cole, names that would go on to become household fixtures in English football. But on this occasion, they were more like a boy band that hit all the wrong notes. The Hammers managed to rack up 42 points that season. In most years, that would be enough to keep you safe and sound in the Premier League, but not this time. It was like showing up to a party in your best outfit, only to find out it's fancy dress and you're the only one who didn't get the memo. What went wrong? Well, for starters, they couldn't win away from home to save their lives. It was like they had some sort of allergic reaction to playing football outside of London. And let's not forget the managerial merry-go-round. Glenn Roeder started the season, but by the end, club legend Trevor Brooking was trying to save the sinking ship. These lads were probably thinking, don't worry, we'll bounce right back up. Little did they know, they'd be spending the next few years trying to claw their way back to the top flight. Talk about a long-term hangover. If you thought Aston Villa's relegation was surprising, wait till you hear about Newcastle United's 2015-16 season. This was a club with Rafael Benitez as the helm, a man who could probably manage a team of traffic cones to a respectable mid-table finish. They even had Gini Wijnaldum, a player who'd go on to win the Champions League and Premier League with Liverpool. But sometimes even the best ingredients can't save a recipe that's gone horribly wrong. Newcastle's season was like a gourmet meal that somehow ended up tasting like cardboard. There were more issues behind the scenes than in a daytime soap opera. And it all culminated in a relegation that left fans scratching their heads and wondering if they'd stumbled into some bizarre parallel universe. The problem? It started long before Benitez arrived in March. Steve McLaren, bless him, couldn't get the best out of a squad that included future stars like Wijnaldum and Moussa Sissoko. And then you had the likes of Mitrovic and a young Ivan Toney as well. It was like watching a 5-star chef burn toast. Painful and slightly baffling. Let's rewind again, this time to 2004. Leeds United, a club with a history as rich as a billionaire's bank account, found themselves in a financial mess that made most student loans look manageable. They had a squad that included Ian Hart, Alan Smith, and the Aussie goal machine Mark Viduka. Oh, and let's not forget that iconic white kit. It was probably the only thing not in the red that season. The 2003-04 season was like watching a slow-motion car crash. You knew it was going to end badly, but you just couldn't look away. Manager after manager tried to right the ship, but it was like trying to plug the Titanic with a wad of chewing gum. Peter Reid started the season, but by November he was yesterday's news. Enter Eddie Gray, Leeds legend, brought in to save the day. Spoiler alert, even he couldn't pull off this miracle. As the season wore on, it became clear that Leeds were in trouble deeper than the Mariana Trench. They were selling players left, right, and center just to keep the lights on. It got so bad that there were jokes about the players having to bring their own packed lunches to training. The sad thing was, those jokes weren't too far from the truth. The once mighty Leeds, the team that had dared to dream, found themselves slipping down the table faster than a greased-up toboggan on an ice slide. Their iconic white kit, once a symbol of pride and ambition, now looked more like a white flag of surrender. The fall of Leeds was a cautionary tale that many clubs would do well to remember. It's all fun and games until you're selling your star players to buy toilet paper for the training ground. From Champions League semi-finalists to championship fodder in just 3 days. Now that's what you call a downfall. The lesson? Well, it's as old as time itself. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. And for heaven's sake, don't spend money you don't have. Leeds' relegation wasn't just a sporting failure, it was a financial cautionary tale that still echoes through the corridors of football clubs today. And now we come to perhaps the most shocking relegation of them all. Remember 2016? Leicester City? The 5,000-1 underdogs stunned the world by clinching the Premier League title. It was the stuff of legends, a fairy tale that even Hans Christian Andersen would have thought was a bit far-fetched. Fast forward to 2021 and they're at it again, lifting the FA Cup like it was just another day at the office. This team had more silver than your Grand's cutlery drawer. But here's where our story takes a turn. The 2022-23 season rolls around and suddenly, Leicester City are about as stable as a Jenga tower in an earthquake. 1 minute, they're rubbing shoulders with Europe's elite. The next, they're facing the prospect of away days at Luton Town. Talk about a fall from grace. So, what went wrong? Well, buckle up, because this is where things get messier than a toddler's eating habits. First off, their defense became about as watertight as a colander. They were leaking goals left, right, and center. No matter what combination they tried, Leicester just couldn't hold firm. Then there were the injuries. Key players were dropping like flies in a bug zapper. Every time you checked the news, another Leicester star was hobbling off to the treatment room. It got so bad that the fans started to wonder if the physio's office had a revolving door installed. But wait, there's more. The transfer market, once Leicester's playground, where they unearthed gems like N'Golo Kante and Riyad Mahrez, suddenly became their nemesis. Their signings were about as successful as a chocolate fire guard. It was like they'd swapped their scouting team for a bunch of blindfolded darts players. As the season wore on, Leicester's form went from bad to worse to is this actually happening? They were picking up points about as often as you find a four-leaf clover. Brendan Rodgers, the man who'd led them to FA Cup glory, found himself out of a job faster than you can say relegation battle. When the final whistle blew on the last day of the season, Leicester found themselves in the bottom three. The team that had been dining at football's top table just a few years ago was now facing the prospect of championship football. So, what does the future hold for these clubs? Well, if there's one thing these stories teach us, it's that in football, anything can happen. Leicester could be back in the Premier League before you know it. Leeds could be challenging for Europe again. Heck, Aston Villa could win the Champions League. So next time you're watching your team and things aren't going well, remember these stories. Remember that even the biggest clubs have a bad season. Remember that even when things look bleakest, there's always hope. And most importantly, remember that it's the ups and downs that make football the greatest sport in the world. Now, who's up for a pint and a chat about next season's promotion candidates?